One of the most neglected poets of the UK since 1945 is the late Thomas Blackburn. I owe a huge debt of gratitude to his marvellous daughter, Julia Blackburn, also a highly talented writer, for giving me the freedom to use all his copyright material at no cost. And I've included his work in a number of anthologies. Blackburn seems to me an incredibly great poet, probably greater than George Barker, certainly greater than Dylan Thomas, and a hugely neglected poet. In her autobiography, The Three of Us, his daughter Julia gives a wonderful picture of Thomas Blackburn, man, father, husband and poet. The Heart. At the woman in the valley I shook an angry fist, for she damned the summer starlight, and when my lovers kissed, brought bell and book and candle, and drove them out of town. But the stars sang, "It is you condemn them, oh pull your own heart down." She stood in her red garment, like a thorn in the side of day. Eros on his golden beaches grew sickly and bled away. I knelt by his spent body, and cherished his vine-leaved crown. But the god said, "It is you condemn me, oh pull your own heart down." She came like a frost, and the dancers grew stiff as she raised her arm. The drums, the flutes and the trumpets hushed in a Dead Sea calm. "Why do you shatter this music and let my sweethearts drown?" "It is you," said the dancers, "you are the Gorgon, oh pull your own heart down." Alone in the sweating metal of her parental tower, Danae knelt, and beyond her circled the nuptial power. The long cold night of the brasses no morning star will crown. "It is you, you, you," she cried, "you are my prison, oh pull your own heart down." Oedipus. His shadow monstrous on the palace wall, that swollen boy, fresh from his mother's arms, the odour of her body on his palms, moves to the eyeless horror of the hall. And with what certainty the revelation gropes for the sage's lips. Words whine and bark out of that crumpled linen in the dark, to name the extremity of violation. How should he not but tremble as the world contracts about him to his mother's room, red curtains stifling in the firelit gloom, his swollen manhood on her bed is curled. Then up and blind him, hands, pull blackness down, and let this woman on the strangling cord hang in the rich embroidery of other gown. Then up and blind him, pull the darkness down. But as he stumbles to the desert sands, bleeding and helpless as the newly born, his daughters leading him with childish hands, I see beyond all words his future shape, its feet upon the carcass of the ape, and round its mighty head prophetic birds. The arrow and the target. The arrows that we loosed abroad shall never find their mark, until they whistle back to us out of the random dark, till the arrow and the target, the archer and the bow, are married in a single act fond lovers only know. The light of a wax taper high on a swinging tree, or a ring on a green finger under the choking sea. The arrows of the archer are pointed with his need, but when the target is transfixed, his body too must bleed, because there is a single act in which they still both share, though disunited by a tense which makes them here and there. To bring that action to itself out of each fractured part, the arrows must go singing from the bowstring of the heart. the arrow for the target, the archer and for the bow, and each heart for the nuptials true lovers only know, who wear upon one finger the gold ring of the sea, and pluck down their wax taper out of the swinging tree. The younger son. The crowns return to dust, the sweetmeats vanish, when the third son with his deliberate eye looks coldly through the banquet and the bauble, and proves a witch's palace is a lie. But always as in solitude and silence he takes his stick and buckles on his load, he sees the two grey dolmens of his brothers beside the deprivation of the road. They did not understand the glare and music, to which they spurred their horses through the night, were not the goal itself, but only beacons to keep their passion of the quest alight. And when some gaudy woman of the palace threw down her handkerchief and made sweet moan, each clattered up the stairs into her bedroom, and on the stroke of midnight turned to stone. The journey was itself their occupation, and not some minion of a torchlit hall. Of course the heart must beat, the pulses quicken, or there's no road or journeying at all. But still a certain irony is needed. I mean that when the princess is awake, the younger son who sought her in the forest and plucked her jewel from the haunted lake is quick to guess there, at the crux of passion, the journey was not merely for a bride, but now some clarity that rinsed his nature when he cut through the brambles to her side. But only his obedience to the language of birds and suppliant fishes by the way can yield the hero that momentous secret which topples giants headlong to the clay. The elder sons exchange such night-time murmurs for the new guidebook of some master hand, then take the hopeless turning at the crossroads and walk their lives out in a waste of sand. Now, by the monolith before the castle, the third son hears the slughorn fade and die, then gasps at the great bastion of those shoulders a league above him in the punished sky. No wonder as the earth shook and giant fingers groped slowly inward through the forest trees, his brothers, lost within their own phantasma, went headlong into blindness on their knees. For saplings bend, rocks split, the grass is ravished, when to the urgent summons of that horn some passion of the heart rears out of silence to drench our landscape with its furious dawn, then only those whom birds and fish have tutored can hold their upright posture by the stone, because they knew the energies that nourish the passion of the monster are their own. This is the younger son's most precious secret, and may we also hear the trapped bird cry, and be rewarded by a naked vision when our appalling manias share the sky. I'll end by reading the poem Trewomut, which Blackburn dedicated to his daughter Julia. A recording on an LP record did once exist of this. The only copy I knew of was in the Saison Poetry Library, but sadly even that seems to have disappeared. The fact that these recordings have never been re-recorded is to me one of the most outrageous omissions of post-war years. There is a channel which I'm not sure who exactly provides these recordings, and these should have been shared on this, but they choose instead to recreate the work of new gen poets who should better. The less I say about them, the better. Trewomut. Darkness of feathers are shed. These birds are gathered back by the enormous hand that casts them at dawn seaward in crumbs of living bread to their forefathering rock, piercing the lens of a wave from the beat of it and the swell. The feathered life they have is indivisible, as from the undertow and skin of a nervous sea, fish and themselves also they reap perpetually. Being clothed and without a seam, in the pouring waters they thread, how can they miss their aim? By the loose surge targeted forever towards their home. Darkness, feathers are shed from this bird-whitened stone. I watch a cormorant pluck life from a nervous sea, with the moon behind my back, conscious of God knows what anxious irrelevance, as these birds swim in the eye of the green circumstance from which I am undone by my duplicity, watching a man and a bird, watching a bird in the surf, watched by a man, and that faint rim of horizon far off, where the darkness breathes from a glint of metal. I wait for the tide to work its equation out, through hunger, compulsive dread, a ghost forever unlaid by a moon's impetus, that takes the sea by the throat. I assert as it gathers up all of night to one moment of stress that is perpetual, my own self-consciousness. The waters boom and rave. Being human, what else can I have than such good and growing pain between the living and dead on this sea-shaken shore? This is a poem, All the Immortals, which was published in the Poetry Review in the 1960s, and which I had the honour of appearing in one poem of mine next to it. It's called All the Immortals. Walking cat-like between the imperatives, battering against iron bars and wood and stone, staring red-eyed through all the correlatives into the heart of being and their own. I think of those who found it hard to be human, Beethoven raging splintered within his head the intolerable details of correct behaviour, while to enter his brain and be interpreted yearned a celestial but disordered order, Baudelaire coupling on a dirty bed with the antithesis of his Beata, pour contempler mon cœur et son dégoût, Seigneur, donnez-moi la force et le courage. That Dutchman posting off his severed ear. Swift stalking through his intolerable dotage, the mob's delight, spectacle and spectre. All the immortals, Yeats said, and all the immortals, their salt-cut hands, their broken eyes that stare through the minute particulars of knowledge into the demon of phenomena. Who else these Lenten days should one